What if some of the very habits you were taught to admire are the same habits keeping you financially dependent? Work hard. Get a good job, buy a nice house, drive a better car, keep your head down, stay comfortable. Don't take too many risks. Sounds responsible, right? But here's the uncomfortable question. What if being responsible without building leverage is simply another form of dependence? Niccolò Machiavelli understood something about power that most people never learn about money. Power doesn't always belong to the person who works the hardest. It belongs to the person who controls the resources, the skills, the relationships, and the decisions that others depend on. And that's where today's lesson begins. Because there are habits that look respectable from the outside, but quietly destroy your ability to become financially independent. You may even be practicing some of them right now. So stay with me until the end, because the final principle may be the most important of all. 1. Stop chasing money too early. One of the biggest mistakes ambitious people make is choosing money before choosing skills. Imagine you're 22 years old. You receive 2 job offers. The first pays $65,000 a year, but the work is repetitive. You'll learn very little, and if you leave the company, you don't have many valuable skills to take with you. The second pays $48,000. But you'll work alongside experts. You'll learn sales, technology, negotiation, leadership, strategy, or another high-value skill. Which one would you choose? Most people immediately choose the $65,000 job, and that's understandable. Bills are real, but there's a problem. Your first objective shouldn't always be maximizing your paycheck. It should be maximizing your paycheck. It should be maximizing your future value. Money pays you today. Skills can pay you for decades. Think of valuable skills as an arsenal. The more powerful skills you possess, the less dependent you become on a single employer, industry, or opportunity. A person who knows how to create value in multiple ways has options, and options are a form of power. You can negotiate. You can change companies. You can start a business. You can freelance. You can build something of your own. You become harder to replace and harder to control. This doesn't mean you should deliberately accept poor compensation forever. It means you should understand the difference between income and capability. Income is what you earn. Capability is what allows you to earn. And early in your career, capability can be the more valuable investment. That's a completely different question. 2. Stop buying the appearance of wealth. Now let's talk about one of the most expensive traps in modern America. Looking rich. You see someone driving a $70,000 car, designer clothes, expensive vacations, a luxury apartment, expensive vacations, a luxury apartment. The latest phone. From the outside, they look successful. But here's what you don't see. The credit card balance, the monthly payments, the debt, the financial anxiety, and the fact that their impressive lifestyle may depend entirely on their next paycheck. This is what makes fake wealth so dangerous. It looks exactly like success until you need the money. Real wealth is different. Real wealth is often invisible. It's the emergency fund nobody sees, the investment account nobody knows about, the business producing income while you're sleeping, the valuable skills you can take anywhere, the debt you eliminated, the assets you quietly accumulated, the financial freedom that doesn't need an audience. And here's where Machiavelli's thinking becomes relevant. Displaying power before you actually possess secure power can create vulnerability. The same principle applies to money. If you're spending your resources trying to convince people you're successful, you're transferring your wealth into appearances. And appearances don't compound. Assets do. There's a massive difference. One creates applause, the other creates freedom. 3. Stop trying to build everything alone. There's another respectable habit that can quietly limit your success. Independence taken too far. Some people believe successful people do everything themselves. They work alone, solve every problem alone, learn everything alone, build everything alone. That's not independence. That's a bottleneck. No individual has enough time, knowledge, energy, or expertise to dominate every area. The smartest people understand leverage. They build relationships with people who possess different strengths. They find mentors. They build professional networks. They collaborate. They create partnerships. They learn from people who have already solved problems they're currently facing. Think about what happens when one person works alone. One person's time equals one person's output. But when you build a team, a network, or a business system, your influence can multiply. That's leverage. And leverage is one of the fundamental mechanisms behind large-scale wealth. Machiavelli understood that no ruler maintains influence through personal strength alone. Influence depends on alliances, resources, loyalty, and the ability to coordinate people and forces. Modern wealth works similarly. Your network can introduce you to opportunities you could never find alone. One person can recommend you for a job. Another can introduce you to an investor. Another can teach you a skill. Another can teach you a skill. Another can become a business partner. Another can warn you about a mistake before you make it. That's why networking shouldn't mean collecting hundreds of random contacts. It means becoming valuable enough that strong relationships naturally form around you. Don't just build a network. Become someone worth having in a network. 4. Kill the ego before it kills your progress. Here's a habit that destroys more potential than people realize. Ego. At first, ambition can make you hungry. You want to prove yourself. You want recognition, you want to be right. But eventually, the same ambition can become a weakness. You become too proud to ask questions, too defensive to accept criticism, too distracted to focus, too convinced that you already know enough. And that's dangerous. Because the world doesn't reward confidence by itself, it rewards results. Imagine you're building a business. Your customers repeatedly tell you that your product isn't solving the problem you think it is. But instead of listening, you defend your idea. You argue, you blame the customers, you tell yourself they don't understand your vision. Meanwhile, someone else listens to the market, changes their product, and takes your customers. Who wins? Not the person with the biggest ego, the person who adapts. This is why successful people develop the ability to separate their identity from their ideas. You can be wrong without being worthless. You can change your strategy without admitting defeat. You can listen without surrendering authority. And you can remain ambitious while staying teachable. The goal isn't to prove that you're right. The goal is to become better. That requires focus. Because in today's world, distraction is everywhere. Notifications, social media, news, arguments, entertainment, other people's opinions. If everything receives your attention, nothing receives your attention. Nothing receives your attention. Distinct carefully. Cab. If the answer is no, let it go. Your attention is an economic resource. Spend it carefully. Take radical responsibility. Now we reach one of the most uncomfortable principles. Responsibility, not partial responsibility. Not responsibility when circumstances are favorable. Radical responsibility. This doesn't mean pretending that external circumstances don't exist. The economy matters. Where you're born matters. Your opportunities matter. Luck matters. Where you're born matters. Your opportunities matter. Luck matters. Other people's decisions matter. But here's the critical distinction. You may not control what happens to you. You can control how you respond. And the moment you constantly blame external forces, you surrender your ability to act. Some of those statements may contain truth, but none of them, by themselves, build your future. That's where agency begins. Maybe you need a new skill. Maybe you need another job. Maybe you need to reduce expenses. Maybe you need better connections. Maybe your strategy simply isn't working. Then change it. Taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything. It means refusing to give away your power. Because if someone else is always responsible for your future, then someone else is always in control of it. 6. Escape. The comfort prison comfort feels harmless. That's why it's so dangerous. You get a stable job, a predictable routine, a comfortable apartment, your regular paycheck, your usual weekend. Nothing is terribly wrong. So you stop pushing. Years pass. Then one day you realize something. You haven't actually been building. You've simply been maintaining. This is the comfort prison. The door isn't locked. You could leave any time, but fear keeps you inside. Fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, fear of all-ear. uncertainty, fear of looking foolish, fear of losing what you've already built. And this is why growth requires controlled discomfort. You don't need to destroy your life just to grow. You don't need to gamble everything. Instead, continually expand your capabilities, learn something difficult, take on greater responsibility, build a side project, meet people outside your normal circle, study industries you don't understand, experiment, invest in your education, challenge your assumptions, because stability should be a platform, not a prison. The goal isn't to live in permanent chaos. The goal is to make sure comfort doesn't become an excuse to stop evolving. The real lesson. So what do all these principles have in common? Skills, money, networks, focus, responsibility, growth. They're all forms of leverage, and leverage is what separates simply earning money from building independence. You can earn a good salary and still be financially fragile. You can own expensive things and still be trapped by debt. You can work extremely hard and still have very little control over your time. You can look successful while being completely dependent on your next paycheck. That's why real wealth isn't simply about how much money enters your bank account. It's about how much control, optionality, and productive capacity you build. The person with valuable skills has options. The person with valuable skills has options. The person with valuable skills has options. The person with assets has options. The person who controls their spending has options. The person who can adapt has options. And option create. Final message. Here's the challenge. Learn a skill, build an asset, strengthen a relationship, cut an unnecessary expense, start something you've been postponing, study something difficult, and most importantly, start waiting for someone else to give you permission to improve your position. You don't need to become ruthless. You don't need to manipulate people. And you don't need to live like a billionaire. You simply need to understand how power and leverage actually work. Because the ultimate form of wealth isn't owning everything. It's needing less permission to control your own life. And if you remember only one thing from this entire video, remember this: don't spend your life trying to look powerful. Build skills, assets, relationships, and discipline until you actually have the power to choose. That's the difference between appearing successful and becoming free. If this video gave you a different perspective on money, ambition, and wealth, subscribe to the channel. Because the next lesson may change the way you think about your financial future.